want him dead. I want his family dead. I want his house burnt to the ground. I want to go to the middle of the night. I want to piss on his head.
Never stop fighting till the fight is done.
The Untouchables.
Hey everyone, I'm John from Let's Talk, and today we're going to be talking about the 1987 classic directed by Brian De Palma, The Untouchables. But before we dive into that, if you're into 4K movie reviews, film reviews, tech reviews, and maybe some TV reviews, we do them all here on this channel, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on. So The Untouchables is turning 35 years old, and in honor of that, Paramount Pictures has released a brand new restoration 4K Blu-ray, and today we're going to be reviewing that. But before we dive into the physical copy that just got released, we're going to talk about the film a little bit. The Untouchables was released on June 3rd, 1987, and was directed by Brian De Palma, written by David Mamet, and stars Kevin Costner as Elliot Ness, Sean Connery, Charles Martin Smith, and Andy Garcia. And this film is actually not my favorite Brian De Palma film. I don't think we've talked about Brian De Palma on this channel yet, but he is actually one of the best directors, I think, of all time. He's kind of been forgotten lately because he hasn't really put out a good film in quite some time. Brian De Palma has directed such classics as this, Scarface, Carrie, and my personal favorite from his, Blowout, starring John Travolta. So Brian De Palma has definitely given us a lot of great films. I think this is most people's favorite. This is because this is probably his most mainstream film. Some might argue Scarface, but this is definitely his most mainstream film. This movie actually has an Academy Award winner in it because Sean Connery did win Best Supporting Actor for this film in 1988 at the Oscars. So he actually, and if I'm being 100% honest with you guys, this is definitely my favorite Sean Connery performance. I know he's James Bond, and I do really enjoy the Connery era Bonds, but this is my favorite performance from him. He did a phenomenal job in this film. There's no reason to believe that there was anyone else who should have won the Academy Award that year. He did great in this film. As far as the film goes, this follows Elliot Ness, played by Kevin Costner, trying to finally put away the legend Al Capone, played by Robert De Niro in this film, to phenomenal effect. Robert De Niro isn't the star of this film, but he did an amazing job in the small role he plays as Al Capone with some great makeup effects and some amazing scenes with some great dialogue. You actually feared this man as Al Capone. For example, in the scene where he takes that baseball bat and just beats the hell out of that guy right at the table in front of everybody. And then, on this opposite side, Kevin Costner, who is really coming into his own here. This is right in the Kevin Costner era of films with Silverado, Field of Dreams, Bull Durham. This is Kevin Costner only 3 years before she directed the Best Picture winner in 1990, Dances with Wolves. So, this is really Kevin Costner and movie star Kevin Costner. And in this movie, he really has to play a Boy Scout, Let's do some good. It really is just a very believable character. He has to be that line of good, that caring character, and he really does a great job with it. But that allows actors like Sean Connery to really just chew the scenery and just be so good, because Sean Connery in this movie is awesome. He is very good. He delivers all his lines perfectly. He's got that, I've been beaten down by the system, I'm trying to do good in a town of bad, and he really plays that perfectly, and he's just so good in this movie. This is around the same time when he did The Last Crusade, so Sean Connery knows what he's doing. This is that kind of like second wind of Connery that we got from this all the way through The Rock in '96. And I think this is my favorite era of Connery, and this is definitely his best performance in that era, even if I personally enjoy him more in The Last Crusade, but this is his best performance by far, I think, career-wise. And some of the supporting actors, like Andy Garcia, is great in this movie, and I'm coming off a real Andy Garcia high because I just watched Ocean's 11 a couple days ago, and he's awesome in that movie. So I've watched 2 Andy Garcia movies in the last couple days, and he's perfect in this role. And Charles Martin Smith as the accountant who finally nails Al Capone in the end with his plan to just get him on tax evasion. He's great in this movie, and then sadly his death scene, which is such a brutal death scene in a film like this, because this really has that 1940s, 1930s kind of feel. They really nailed the tone in this film, and when he dies, it feels like the director who made Scarface. When it says touchable painted in the blood on the walls, the blood, the way it was splattered on the walls, felt to me just like in the chainsaw scene in Scarface. And to be put in a movie like this, which has that mainstream appeal to it, and the way the score is, which we'll get into the score in a second, builds up, it makes it still feel upbeat, but this is tragic, and Kevin Costner and Sean Connery sell the tragedy of his death amazingly in that scene in the elevator. But like I said, the score is done by Ennio Morricone. He has had some of the best scores of all time. I'm talking The Thing, The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. That score that you know, dun, 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 that's all from Ennio Morricone. That's all him. And for more modern film viewers, in The Hateful Eight, the main theme of that was a B-side on The Thing that was done by him. So even though he's passed away, he was still able to be in The Thing with one of his B-side songs. So that's really cool. He's one of the greatest score makers of all time. And to get him for this score was awesome in this film. That actually is one of the big stars of this film for me. That and the cinematography, which is also so awesome. It has that De Palma cinematography feel, which is really just based off of Alfred Hitchcock's cinematography. Like, you could just tell that De Palma is just such a Hitchcock fan. He's said it a million times, and his movies, for the most part, are modern thrillers, just like how Alfred Hitchcock's were at the time. So to have that feel in it, and it's just such beautiful shots, so much close-up zooms where the character's face is to the right of the frame, really close to the camera, but the background is kind of like still in focus, but it's not as focused as the face to the right. I love shots like that, and De Palma has done that in Blowout, and in this, he's just always had that camera work that makes this feel elevated for a film fan from me, but also has that mainstream appeal to the general public that would love this kind of movie. And for a period piece in the 80s, you just knew the Academy was going to love a film like this. And for me, the biggest weakness of this film is actually its script. There are certain aspects of the way these lines are delivered and how they're written that could be very cheesy. And I was just trying to think of it from a point like, okay, I get it, what they're trying to go for. This is probably how people talked in the 30s and 40s. But it just, the way it sounded and way some of it came off very, like, just super schmaltzy and cheesy, especially in the first third of the movie. They kind of moved past it in the second and third act of the film, but it was very noticeable to me, especially looking at it now and through a different lens, that, yeah, I don't know, I would have definitely changed some lines and, like, done some things different. So it was just from a script standpoint, it wasn't my favorite, especially for De Palma, but, you know, he didn't write the script, and, you know, very famously he has actually said that him taking a step back and like somebody else and doing their vision was what kind of drove him to do this film. He had to take a step back and give full credit to the writer. And you know what? I mean, that for me, if I'm being honest, that was the one like glaring negative. Like I said, this is not my favorite De Palma. You know, I have some aspects of the story that I'm not a huge fan of, but it's still a great film, and I understand why most people would put this as their #1 De Palma, because, like I said, it's got that crossover appeal. But enough talking about the film. I love the film. I think it's a great film. If you haven't seen The Untouchables, definitely check it out. It's definitely one of the most famous films from the 80s, and Kevin Costner is a movie star, and Sean Connery, well, he does a phenomenal job. So check out The Untouchables. But let's move on and talk about the physical release of this brand new 4K. So Paramount has a brand new 4K out for this. It's just a regular studio release from Paramount, so that means that you're getting one 4K Blu-ray in here. There is no other disc. It's just one disc and one digital code. So what you get here is just your standard slip cover. It comes on and off, same artwork. Pretty decent artwork. One of the most famous scenes in film history is the stair scene where the baby carriage is going down the stairs. That's the stairs right here on the cover. So that's what you're going to get when you get the standard edition of this 4K. Now there is a 4K Blu-ray Steelbook exclusively to Best Buy, which is actually very well done. I just opted to go for the standard packaging this time. And actually, one thing that I was concerned about was the pricing. So right now the Steelbook is going for $28 and this is going for $19.99. So I was very worried that we were actually going to get a very limited release of this. But to my surprise, it's very well done, and like they really did a full restoration. They took for the original film negative. It's a completely new scan for this. It's got beautiful HDR10, Dolby Vision. So I really do think that the effort was put in. It's not a Criterion release. It's not an Arrow Video release. What we're getting here is your studio regular release, but they did a very good job. And I gotta be honest, the visuals were not the greatest I've ever seen from the 4K format. I wasn't blown away. I wasn't knocked off. My socks were knocked off while I was watching this, but it was definitely the best that the film has ever been. I just watched this about, I would say 7 or 8 months ago on a stream, and it was definitely a noticeable jump from that but it wasn't like, oh my god, I cannot believe that the film looks like this. And that's just what and that's my honest opinion. The HDR and the Dolby Vision definitely did help this film, and the 4K format definitely did help it. The resolution was super clear. You get plenty of film grain, so it was nice to see that they didn't touch that and try and just, do auto smoothing on that, but it still looked really good. It's definitely the best that this has ever looked, but it's not a visual, it's not going to have visuals that are going to be like, oh my god, I can't believe it, this is completely changed my vision of this film. Like what happened to me with Escape from New York, where I believe that the 4K format has completely changed how I look at that film. I still look at this the same. It's not going to blow you away. But the audio, on the other hand, we do get Dolby Atmos on this, and we get a Dolby HD 7.1. I couldn't test that, but if you do have the availability for that, it is on here. So they definitely put a lot of work into putting the audio in this, and that was probably the most noticeable. This movie has a big gunfight, like I said, on the stairs like that, and the Dolby Atmos really helped shooting around your room where the gun is being fired from. So I really do think they put a lot of great audio mixing into the Atmos track. And like I said, the score is so good, and the first time you hear it, when they cut from one scene to the next and the score starts building really hard and really loud, your Dolby Atmos track is awesome. And that is probably the best part of this 4K format and this new release, is that I thought the Atmos track was awesome. I do think that the audio is definitely the shining star of this new package, so I can definitely recommend it from an audio standpoint. Now, the extras on here, actually, for me, I thought the extras were actually very good. Like, we get a lot of stuff, a lot of interviews with the cast, a retrospective, an original featurette about the film, so there is a lot of good extras. There are no audio commentary tracks, which I told you guys. I'm not the biggest commentary track fan. I do enjoy them every now and again, but I don't ever really run through a film with a commentary track playing, and unfortunately, if you're a big fan of that, there are no commentary tracks on this disc, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, so that's not on there. You do have some good extras, but it's all on one disc, so we're not getting a full-blown retrospective from years and years in the making and everything like that, like an hour-and-a-half documentary now when we're looking back with Kevin Costner or with Brian De Palma. That's not on here. Unfortunately, this is just the Paramount release, so when you get that, the extras are usually a little bit more bare bones, and I can honestly say that they are here, but for the extras that we do get on here, I, from a personal standpoint, did enjoy them. I don't know if you will. I really do think that that is going to be on personal preference and what you look for in your extras from 4K releases. So that, if I'm being honest, that's what it is. And 100% honestly, I did think that this was just your run-of-the-mill regular 4K Blu-ray release with a really good new restoration on it with an awesome Atmos track. So if I was going to say, should you go out and buy this? You know what? For the price it is, like I said, for $20, I was really expecting to be disappointed, and I wasn't. But I also wasn't blown away. I do think that this is just a very good 4K Blu-ray. For 20 bucks, I do think I can recommend that you buy it. But more than likely, with 4th of July coming up, there will be a sale, and this probably will get thrown in there. And for $15, that's probably the perfect price for this. But if you're into 4K Steelbooks, it does have a very nice one, and I do recommend that if you are a big fan of The Untouchables. So, that's my thoughts on the brand new 4K release of The Untouchables. If you are a fan of physical media and film reviews, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and you tell all your friends.